Queen Vela stood near her throne and watched the human ship land in her palace courtyard. The massive doors of the vessel opened slowly, releasing steam into the cold morning air. Her 4 advisors stood behind her, whispering among themselves. They had been whispering for weeks now, ever since she agreed to this marriage alliance with Earth. The Arathi Empire was powerful, but Earth's growth in the galaxy had become impossible to ignore. In just 50 years, humans had spread across dozens of star systems. They built colonies faster than any species before them. They adapted to every environment. They multiplied like no other race in known space. War with humans would be long and bloody. So Vela's council had suggested marriage instead. A political union between the Queen of Arathi and a human representative. Peace through connection. Vela had expected them to send someone impressive. A famous general, perhaps. A brilliant scientist. A wealthy leader of their corporate empires. Someone who matched her status. Instead, the man who walked down the ship's ramp was ordinary. He was of average height for a human male. His black hair was neatly combed. He wore simple formal clothing in dark blue colors. His face was pleasant but unremarkable. He carried no weapons, no gifts, no display of wealth or power. His name, according to the documents, was Kim Dawn. His title was Cultural Liaison. Essentially, he was a bureaucrat. A paper pusher. Nobody. "The humans mock us," whispered her chief advisor, Lord Karam. His silver scales flickered with anger. "They send us their garbage." Vela said nothing. She watched the human approach. What struck her first was his smile. It was warm and genuine, reaching his dark eyes. He walked with a relaxed pace, looking around at her palace with what appeared to be real interest and appreciation. When he reached the bottom of the throne steps, he bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he said in her language. His accent was heavy, but the words were correct. "Thank you for welcoming me to your beautiful world." "I am honored beyond words." Vela tilted her head. He had learned to speak Arathi. Most aliens never bothered. "You may rise," she said. "I am Queen Vela. You are Kim Dawn?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Please call me Dohan if it is easier." "Very well, Dohan. You understand why you are here?" "I do." His smile remained, but his eyes grew serious. "I am here to marry you and help build peace between our peoples. I take this responsibility very seriously." She studied him for a long moment. He did not look away or show any sign of nervousness. "Interesting. Come," she finally said. "We have much to discuss." Over the following weeks, Dohan proved to be strange. Not in a bad way, but in a way that confused Vela deeply. He woke early each morning and walked through the palace gardens. He spoke with the servants, asking about their families and their lives. He remembered their names. He remembered the names of their children. When palace cooks prepared Arathi food for him, he ate everything without complaint. Some dishes were spicy enough to make most aliens cry. He simply smiled, wiped his forehead, and asked for more. He spent hours in the palace library, learning about Arathi history and culture. He asked questions constantly, not political questions or military questions. He asked about holidays, about music, about the stories parents told their children at night. "Why do you care about these things?" Vila asked him one evening. She had found him in the library again, surrounded by old books. He looked up from his reading. "How can I be a good husband to you if I don't understand your people? How can I help build peace if I don't know what your people love and fear and dream about?" She had no answer for that. The formal wedding ceremony happened 3 weeks after his arrival. It was a grand event, broadcast across the empire. Vela wore traditional robes of gold and silver. Dohan wore matching colors, looking slightly uncomfortable but determined. When they exchanged vows, his voice was steady and sincere. When tradition required him to offer her a gift, he presented a small wooden box. Inside was a flower from Earth, preserved perfectly in clear crystal. "On my world, this flower means new beginnings," he explained. "I wanted to give you something from my home to show that I bring my whole heart to this union." Her advisors whispered again. A flower, not jewels or weapons or technology. A flower. But Vela looked at the delicate thing, at the care with which it had been preserved, and felt something strange stir in her chest. The weeks turned into months. Do-hun continued his quiet ways. He had no demands, no complaints, no schemes. He attended council meetings when invited, but rarely spoke. He stood beside her at formal events, always a step behind, always respectful. Her people began to like him. The servants spoke well of him. The guards nodded to him with genuine respect. Children in the palace ran to greet him when he walked by. One night, Vela found him alone on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The twin moons hung heavy in the sky, casting silver light across the towers and domes. "You have been here 3 months," she said, joining him. "You have not once complained about your situation. You are far from home, married to a stranger, a political tool for both our governments. Does this not bother you?" Do-hun was quiet for a moment. The night wind moved through his hair. "I volunteered for this, Your Majesty." She blinked. "You volunteered? Why would anyone volunteer to be a political hostage?" He turned to look at her, and his smile was softer now, more real somehow. "Someone had to build the bridge between our peoples. Someone had to take the first step. It might as well be someone who actually wanted to take it. That does not answer my question, doesn't it?" He looked back at the moons. "I spent many years of my life doing difficult work that left scars inside and out. When this opportunity came, I saw a chance to do something different. Something that creates instead of destroys. Something that brings people together instead of tearing them apart." Vela studied his profile in the moonlight. For a moment, something flickered across his face. A shadow, a memory. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual gentle expression. "You are a strange human, Do-hun." "So I have been told, Your Majesty." She almost smiled, almost. "You may call me Vela when we are alone." His eyes widened slightly. Then that warm smile returned. "Thank you, Vela. That means more than you know." She did not know what to make of this man. But as she stood beside him under the twin moons, she realized she wanted to find out. 4 months into the marriage, Vela began to notice things that did not make sense. It started with small moments. Little details that her eyes caught, but her mind struggled to explain. One morning, she was walking with Do-hun through the palace kitchens. A young servant girl was carrying a heavy tray of glasses. Her foot slipped on the wet floor. The tray flew from her hands. Vela saw the disaster coming. Glass would shatter everywhere. The girl would be punished for the waste. But Do-hun moved. His hand shot out and caught the tray before it could fall even a few inches. Not a single glass moved from its position. He steadied the tray, smiled at the shocked girl, and placed it safely on a nearby table. "Careful," he said gently. "The floors can be slippery." The girl thanked him with wide eyes. Vela said nothing, but her mind was racing. No one should be able to move that fast. Not even her trained guards could have caught that tray in time. She began to watch him more closely after that. Whenever they walked through crowded places, Do-hun positioned himself between her and any potential danger. He did this without thinking, without any obvious awareness. His body simply moved to shield her from blind corners, dark doorways, and groups of strangers. His eyes were never still. They moved constantly, checking windows, rooftops, exits. He knew where every guard stood. He noticed when anyone looked at Vela for too long. Once, During a state dinner, a server approached Vela from behind with a dish. Without turning around, without any possible way of seeing the man, Dohan shifted his body slightly, just enough to block the server's path to the queen. When the server moved to the other side, Dohan shifted again. He was protecting her, constantly, instinctively. This was not the behavior of a bureaucrat. One afternoon, Vela arranged a training demonstration with her royal guard. This was common entertainment for the court. Her best warriors would show their skills with blade and staff. "Would you like to participate, husband?" she asked Dohan casually. "Perhaps try a friendly match?" He laughed and rubbed the back of his neck. It was a gesture she had seen before, always when he wanted to appear harmless and foolish. "I would only embarrass myself," he said. "I was never trained for combat. I would be beaten in seconds. Surely you have some training. Earth is a dangerous place, is it not?" "I learned to run very fast," he joked. "That was my training. Run away quickly." The court laughed politely. Dohan smiled his usual warm smile. But Vela watched his eyes during the demonstration. They tracked every movement of the fighters. Not with the casual interest of a spectator, but with the sharp focus of an expert. When one guard made a mistake in his form, Dohan's eyes narrowed slightly. When another guard used an unusual technique, Dohan tilted his head and filed the movement away. He was analyzing them, studying their strengths and weaknesses, learning their patterns. Why would a cultural liaison need to do that? That night, Vela could not sleep. She went to her private study and opened a secure terminal. Through secret channels that even her council did not know about, she had contacts within Earth's government. Contacts who could access files that normal diplomats could not. She typed in Kim Dohan's name and waited. The first file was the public one. Kim Dohan, born in Seoul, Korea, studied languages at university, worked for the diplomatic corps for 15 years, married once, divorced, no children. Current assignment, cultural liaison to the Arathi Empire. Boring, normal, exactly what she had been told. But her contacts had found a second file. A hidden file buried deep in military databases. Most of it was black. Page after page of thick black bars covering the text. Classified, restricted, beyond top secret. But some words remained visible between the bars. Seoul Special Operations Division. 13 years active service. Confirmed operations. Classified. Kill count. Classified. Commendations. Classified. 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 Status. Retired. Vela sat back in her chair, her heart's pounding. Special operations. 13 years. Kill count. The gentleman who remembered servant names. The kind husband who brought her flowers and learned her language. The quiet human who claimed he could not fight. He was a killer. A professional killer. One so dangerous that even his own government hid his records. Why had Earth sent her an assassin? She did not sleep that night. Instead, she sat in her study and thought about everything she had seen. Every strange moment. Every small inconsistency. The next morning, she watched Dohan help an elderly gardener carry heavy bags of soil across the courtyard. He was laughing at something the old man said. Dirt covered his hands and clothes. His face was open and happy. He looked like the most harmless person in the galaxy. Now, she knew better. But here was the thing that confused her most. He had done nothing wrong. In 4 months, he had never threatened anyone. He had never used his skills for anything except quietly protecting her. He had never lied to her directly. He had simply hidden who he really was. Val watched him work in the garden, and she felt 2 emotions warring inside her. Fear, because she had been sleeping next to a weapon without knowing it. And curiosity, because she wanted to understand why such a weapon had chosen to pretend to be a flower. She decided not to confront him. Not yet. Instead, she would watch and wait. She would learn what kind of man her husband truly was. And if he ever became a threat to her or her people, she would be ready. What she did not know was that her chance to see his true nature would come much sooner than she expected. Dark forces were already moving against her throne, and the gentle husband she had dismissed as nobody was about to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. The Festival of Three Moons was the most important celebration in the Arathi Empire. Once every 12 years, all three of the planet's moons aligned in the night sky. The people believed this brought great fortune and blessing. Vila stood on the ceremonial platform in the central plaza of her capital city. Thousands of her people filled the streets below. Music played from every corner. Children sat on their parents' shoulders, waving flags of silver and gold. Duhan stood beside her, dressed in festival robes. He was smiling, as always, watching the celebration with warm eyes. Vila was about to begin her blessing speech when she noticed something strange. Dohan had stopped smiling. His body had gone still in a way she had never seen before. His eyes were moving rapidly, scanning the crowd, the rooftops, the shadows. "Something is wrong," he said quietly, his voice suddenly flat and hard. Before she could respond, the first shot came. A beam of energy sliced through the air where Vala's head had been a moment earlier. The only reason she survived was because Dohan had already grabbed her arm and pulled her down. Screams erupted from the crowd. The royal guards rushed forward, but their movements seemed slow and confused. They had not expected an attack on this sacred day. A second shot hit the shield generator beside the platform. The energy barrier around Vela flickered and died. Someone had sabotaged her protection systems. "Two shooters," Dohan said. His voice was calm, as if he was discussing the weather. "North Tower and East Building. Professional equipment. Coordinated attack." Vela looked at him in shock. How could he know all this from just 2 shots? The third shot came from the East Building. It was aimed directly at Vela's chest. There was no time to dodge, no time to react. Dohan stepped in front of her. The energy beam hit him in the left shoulder. The impact should have thrown him backward. It should have killed him. Instead, he merely stumbled slightly and kept his balance. "Stay down," he said. Then he moved. Vela had seen fast before. Her best warriors could move with impressive speed. But what Dohan did was something different entirely. One moment, he was standing beside her. The next, he was 15 feet away, moving through the panicked crowd like a ghost. His feet barely seemed to touch the ground. People later said they never even felt him pass. He reached the first shooter's position in seconds. The assassin, hidden behind a decorative statue, tried to turn his weapon toward the incoming human. He was far too slow. Duhan single quotes as hand moved. There was a sound of breaking bone. The assassin's weapon shattered in his grip. A second strike hit the man's neck, and he collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. The second shooter was on a rooftop 30 meters away. He was already firing at Dohan, energy beams cutting through the space where the human should have been. But Dohan was never where the shots expected him to be. He reached the building's wall and began to climb, not fly. He went up the vertical surface like gravity was merely a suggestion. His hands found holds that should not exist. His body moved in ways that human bodies should not be able to move. The second assassin saw death coming for him. He tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Dohan reached the roof. There was a brief struggle, a scream, then silence. The whole thing had taken less than 30 seconds. Vela stood frozen on the platform, surrounded by her confused guards. Blood pounded in her ears. The wound in Dohan's shoulder should have killed him. yet he had moved as if it was nothing. The speed he had shown was beyond anything she had ever witnessed. Dohan climbed back down from the roof and walked through the crowd toward her. His festival robes were stained with blood, some his own, most belonging to others. His left arm hung slightly lower than his right, the shoulder wound clearly painful, but his face was calm, controlled. The warm, gentle man was gone. In his place was something older and harder, something that had been forged in violence and honed by years of deadly work. The royal guards raised their weapons as he approached. They did not know what to make of what they had just witnessed. "Lower your weapons," Vela commanded, finding her voice. "He is your queen's husband." The guards obeyed, but their eyes remained wide with fear and confusion. Dawn stopped at the base of the platform. He looked up at Vela, and for a moment, she saw something like sadness flicker across his face. "We should move you inside, Your Majesty," he said. His voice was still that flat, professional tone. "There may be more threats. We need to secure the palace." You took a shot for me." "Yes." "You killed those men." "Yes." "Who are you?" He was silent for a long moment. The crowd around them was chaos, people running, guards shouting, sirens beginning to sound in the distance. But in the small space between Vela and her husband, there was only stillness. "Someone who made a promise," he finally said. "I promise to protect you, Vela. That promise has no limits." He extended his uninjured hand to help her down from the platform. She stared at that hand. The hand that had just killed 2 men in less time than it took to draw breath. The same hand that had so gently presented her with a preserved flower on their wedding day. She took it dot around them. The festival of 3 moons had become something else entirely. The story would spread across the empire by morning. The human consort who had saved the queen. The harmless bureaucrat who moved like death itself. And in the shadows, the enemies who had planned this attack watched in horror as their carefully laid trap failed completely. They had studied human military records. They had prepared for soldiers, for weapons, for technology. They had not prepared for Kim Do-hun. No one ever did. The investigation moved quickly in the days following the attack. Vela's security forces worked day and night to find the people responsible for the assassination attempt. Evidence was gathered, witnesses were questioned, suspects were identified. What surprised everyone was how fast the answers came. Anonymous tips arrived at exactly the right moments. Documents appeared from nowhere, pointing to hidden bank accounts and secret communications. Every time the investigation hit a wall, a new piece of information would unlock the next door. Vela knew who was responsible for these helpful coincidences. Dohan never admitted to anything. He spent his days recovering from his shoulder wound, which had healed much faster than her doctors expected. He attended his usual routines, walking in the gardens, reading in the library, talking with the servants. But sometimes, late at night, Vela noticed his absence. She would wake to find his side of the bed empty, the sheets cold. He always returned before morning, slipping back into their chambers as quietly as a shadow. The conspirators were arrested within a week. A group of noble families who had opposed the human alliance. They had hoped that killing Vela would end the marriage treaty and stop humanity's growing influence in Orethi space. They had not expected her husband to be the most dangerous obstacle in their path. On the 8th night after the attack, Vela summoned Dohan to her private study. She had waited long enough. She needed answers. He arrived wearing simple clothes, his shoulder still bandaged. The wound had been deep, but he moved as if the pain meant nothing to him. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, closing the door behind him. "Sit." He sat in the chair across from her desk. The lamplight made shadows on his face. For a moment, he looked older than his years. "You are not a cultural liaison," Vela said. It was not a question. "No, you work for Earth's military. Their secret division." The one that handles problems that cannot be solved through normal means. I did. I am retired now. Retired. She let the word hang in the air. Is that what you call this? Hiding among my people, pretending to be harmless? I am not hiding. His voice was calm but tired. I am trying to be something different. Different from what? A killer? He flinched slightly at the word. It was the first sign of emotion she had seen from him since the attack. Yes, he said quietly. Different from a killer. Vila leaned back in her chair and studied him. This was not the conversation she had expected. She had prepared for lies, for excuses, for clever explanations. She had not prepared for honesty. Tell me the truth, she said. All of it. If there are any more lies between us, I will send you back to Earth tonight. Dohm was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. I was recruited when I was 19 years old. The Special Operations Division saw something in me, some talent for violence that I did not know I had. They trained me for 3 years. Then they sent me to work. He looked down at his hands. I cannot tell you the details. Much of it is classified, and some of it I have tried very hard to forget. But I will tell you this. I was very good at my job. Too good. For 13 years, I went where they sent me and did what they asked. I killed people who needed to be killed, and I told myself that I was protecting my country. And then I started to wonder if I was still protecting anyone, or if I had simply become a weapon that could not stop firing. He raised his eyes to meet hers. I was losing myself, Vela, bit by bit, year by year. The man I used to be was disappearing. I was becoming nothing more than a tool of death. His words hung in the quiet room. Outside, the night insects sang their endless songs. When this mission was offered to me, I saw a chance to escape, he continued. A chance to use my skills for something good. Not killing, but protecting. Not destroying, but building. I wanted to prove to myself, if no one else, that I could be more than what they made me. Were you sent to spy on me? No. My orders were simple. Protect the Queen. Ensure the Alliance survives. Earth wants peace with Orthy. You are the key to that peace. My only purpose here is to keep you alive. Why the deception? Why pretend to be harmless? Would you have trusted me if I arrived with weapons and told you I was a trained killer? He smiled sadly. Would your people have accepted me? Would anyone have believed that I wanted peace? Vela considered this. He had a point. An obvious military operative would have caused fear and suspicion. A harmless bureaucrat could be ignored, underestimated, dismissed. That is a reasonable strategy, she admitted. It was not only strategy. He stood up slowly and walked to the window. The twin moons shone silver light across his face. I was tired of being looked at with fear. I wanted, just for a while, to be seen as something gentle, something kind. Even if it was a mask, wearing it made me remember who I used to be. And now? The mask is broken. Everyone knows what you are. Yes. He turned to face her. I find that I do not want to hide from you anymore. You deserve to know the man you married, all of him, not just the pretty parts. They stood in silence, looking at each other across the room. Outside, the palace was quiet. The city was sleeping, and the moons continued their endless journey across the sky. You took a shot from me, Vela said finally. You could have died. I would take 100 shots. Why? He stepped closer. His eyes, usually so carefully controlled, were open now, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. Because somewhere between learning your language and watching you fight for your people, I stopped pretending that this was just a mission. Somewhere along the way, I started to care about you, about your world, about everything you are trying to build. Vila felt her heart beating hard in her chest. This was not the conversation she had expected at all. This marriage was supposed to be political, she said softly. It was. He reached out, hesitant, and brushed a strand of silver hair from her face. It does not have to stay that way. She looked at him, really looked at him. The gentleman who remembered servant names. The killer who moved like death. The tired soldier who wanted to become something more. All of these were real. All of these were her husband. I do not fully trust you yet, she said honestly. I know, but I am willing to try. For the first time since the attack, his smile reached his eyes. That is all I ask. 6 months had passed in the night when all truths were spoken. The relationship between Vela and Dohan had slowly transformed. Where there had once been polite distance, there was now genuine warmth. Where there had been suspicion, there was growing trust. They took meals together. They walked in the gardens together. Sometimes, late at night, they sat on their balcony and talked about everything and nothing, watching the moons travel across the sky. Dohan still protected her, but now he did so openly. He trained with her royal guard, teaching them techniques they had never seen before. He helped redesign the palace security systems. He became, in all ways that mattered, the Queen's shield. It was during this time of peace that the Dominion fleet arrived. 300 warships, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Orethi space. They were massive vessels, bristling with weapons, carrying armies that had conquered 12 star systems in the past decade. The Dominion was an empire built on blood and fear. Their leader was called Supreme Commander Thrakos, a warlord who had never lost a battle. His message was simple: surrender or die. We have no fleet that can match them, said General Moran, Vela's top military commander. Our ships are built for trade and exploration, not war. If we fight, we will be destroyed within days. The council chamber was filled with fear. Advisors argued and shouted. Some wanted immediate surrender. Others wanted to flee to distant colonies. Dohan stood in the corner, silent, watching everything. There's another way, Vela said, cutting through the noise. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. An ancient way. The council fell silent. The right of single combat, she continued. It is an old law, from the time before the Dominion became an empire. A challenge between champions. The winner takes all. The Dominion would never accept. General Moran said. They would if they believed. They could not lose. Vela turned to look at Dohan. They would if they thought our champion was weak. Understanding flickered across the council members' faces. They looked at the quiet human in the corner, the bureaucrat, the cultural liaison, the harmless husband. They remembered what he had done at the Festival of Three Moons. Supreme Commander Thrakos laughed when he received the challenge. His flagship sat at the center of his fleet, close enough to Orethi that his weapons could reach the capital within minutes. Single combat? His voice boomed through the communication channel. Very well, Little Queen. I will grant you this mercy. My champion will crush yours, and then my armies will take your world without resistance. You will watch your people become slaves. Who is your champion? Vela asked. Thrko smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Gorath, the undefeated. Winner of 40 arena matches. Killer of champions from a dozen worlds. No being has ever survived more than 30 seconds against him. And my champion, Vela said, is Kim Dohan of Earth. Thrakos looked at the file that appeared on his screen. Human. Cultural liaison. No military record. He laughed again. This is your champion? This nothing? I expected more from you, Queen Vela. Prepare to kneel. The combat arena was set on neutral ground, a platform floating in space between the fleets. Cameras broadcast the fight to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Garth the Undefeated was terrifying. He stood 8 feet tall, covered in thick scales that could stop energy weapons. His arms were as thick as tree trunks. In his hand, he carried a plasma blade that hummed with deadly energy. His 40 victories had made him a legend. Dohan walked onto the platform wearing simple black clothes. No armor, no visible weapons. He looked small next to the massive alien warrior. Across the galaxy, viewers laughed at what they saw. This human would be dead in seconds. Any last words, tiny creature? Gorath growled. Dohan looked up at the monster before him and smiled. It was not his usual warm smile. This was something older, something colder. I retired to get away from this kind of work, he said. But some things are worth coming out of retirement for. Gorath roared and attacked. The plasma blade swept down in an arc that should have split Dohan in half. But Dohan was not there anymore. He had moved. Not jumped, not dodge moved in a way that seemed to ignore the normal rules of physics. One moment he was in front of Gorath. The next he was beside him. Dohan's hand touched the giant's wrist. It looked like a gentle tap. Gorath's arm went limp. The plasma blade fell from suddenly nerveless fingers. The Dominion champion roared in confusion and swung his other fist, a blow that could have crushed stone. Dohan flowed around it like water, his movements so smooth they barely seemed real. 3 strikes. 3 precise touches to specific points on Gorath's massive body. The giant fell, not dead, but completely paralyzed. His eyes were wide with shock and terror. He could not move, could not speak, could barely breathe. In 11 seconds, the undefeated champion had been reduced to a helpless prisoner. Dohan stood over his fallen opponent, barely breathing hard. "I could kill you," he said, loud enough for all cameras to hear. But killing is what the Dominion does. The Arthi are better than that. You will live, and you will tell others what happened here today. He turned and walked back to where Vila waited at the edge of the platform. The Dominion fleet withdrew that night. Supreme Commander Threkos, humiliated beyond recovery, would be removed from power within the month. The empire that had conquered 12 worlds began to crumble and across the galaxy. The message spread: do not underestimate humans, especially the quiet ones. That evening, Vela found Dohan in their garden. He was sitting among the flowers he had helped plant during his first months on her world. The twin moons cast silver light across his face. "The galaxy knows what you are now," she said, sitting beside him. "There is no more hiding, I know." He looked at his hands that could kill with terrifying ease, hands that held her so gently. "I hoped I was done with that life. I hoped I could just be normal. Normal is overrated." Vila leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his strange human heart. "You saved my world. You saved my people. And you did it without unnecessary death. I did not want to kill him. I am tired of killing. I know." She took his hand in hers. "That is why you are different from them. That is why you are more than what they made you." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled his real smile, the warm one she had come to love. "What happens now?" "Now," Vila said, we build. We build the bridge between our peoples, just like you always wanted. We create something lasting. Together?" She squeezed his hand. Together. Above them, the twin moons rose, and across the stars, legends were born. They spoke of the alien queen and her human husband, the weapon who chose to become a gardener, the killer who became a protector god, and in the gardens of Orathi, where flowers from 2 worlds grew side by side, there was finally peace. True strength, they learned, was not about destruction. True strength was knowing when to stop.